Hey there class, I thought I'd do a video focusing a little bit more on APA documentation because I know this is like the scariest part of the research and I don't want you to lose yourself in it. I want you to think about the content that you're putting into your paper, but I do want you to go back and I want you to feel confident that you're not plagiarizing and that you're citing your sources effectively. So I have a couple of screens open, a couple of tabs open, and we're going to take a look very slowly at what I'm doing here, and hopefully this will help you a little bit. So what I did is I went to the library in DeVry, and I just took gun control as a keyword and did a search, and I came up with this article called The Disruptors. I know that from the detailed record, you see here it says detailed record, the author is George Zornick and the source is The Nation. This was published on the 30th of April 2018. It gives you a volume, edition number, page numbers. It gives you the paragraphs, but this isn't really important. We know this is an article. It tells you that right here. If you're unsure what The Nation is, because ultimately when you're doing your references page, you need to know what you're looking at. Is this a magazine? Is this a newspaper? What is this I'm looking at? You can click on the word The Nation, and this will tell you everything you need to know. And right here it says this is a news, political commentary and opinion, social commentary and opinion periodical. So, and here's your giveaway, a journal of politics, economics, education, etc. So you don't have to be lost in what it is you're reading, but you do have to identify what you're reading, because there is a difference when you come to writing a reference source for a newspaper versus a journal versus a book versus a website article. So that's a little important thing that you need to know. Let's go back. So we know the title is called The Disruptors. We know who the author is. We know what type of source we're looking at. And now we want to read this. Well, in order to read it, you either have to click on HTML or PDF. HTML is a little quicker. If you don't see either of these options, you can't read the article. You're only going to get this page. Databases are sold to institutions at different levels, and sometimes they'll tell you that there is an article out there, but you don't have access to it. In this case, we do, so we don't have to worry about it. Just to show you the difference, here's the HTML. You can listen to it as opposed to reading it. That will be up to you. And here it is in PDF form. Now you'll notice that the PDF form is the actual periodical itself. It's as if you're holding this in your hand. And so this becomes important when it comes to things like page numbers, which you see down here. If you are reading the PDF form, you would have to give the page numbers as opposed to the HTML form, in which case you don't, because obviously there is no page number here. So let's just say that I'm reading through this article and I say, oh, here's an interesting statistic. In 2016, 77% of all homicides in Washington, D.C. were committed with a gun. And we want to take that, we want to use that in our essay. We think that's important. So I'd start up here and say, okay, the brilliance of cutting and pasting. There we go. We have our original quote. And you may want to make a note to yourself, who was that author again? Because that's one of the things you need to know for your parenthetical citation. So the author was Zornick, and this was published in 2018. So you may want to make a little note to yourself here. Now you have a couple of options. If you looked at the huddle or you attended the huddle, you know that I said there are 3 ways to quote: signaling, weaving, and using a full sentence. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I haven't worked with this, so bear with me. If it's the first time I'm talking about Zornick, I would probably do this according to, let me scroll back here, I think his name was George Zornick, in his article, The Disruptors. He notes that, and then I want to put in the quoted material that I liked so much. Okay. That's easy, right? The only thing I didn't do was I didn't put the year. So I go back as close to his name as possible. I put the year. Since this is a direct quotation, I would put the page number if I was looking at the PDF. Again, since I was working from the HTML version, I don't have a page number. If I was working from the PDF, and just for the sake of argument, this was on page 14, I would do this. But since this is the HTML version, I don't have to include the page number. I'm golden. There we go. And you've just dropped in your quote. Now, if I wanted to weave this quote in, that's a little bit more difficult because I have to think, well, what could come before it? So I know this part's going to go in. But let's say that this was an increase. So I write something like, the increasing number of crimes committed, whoops, sorry about that, by guns in DC is alarming because it makes up, and I want to get to that 77%. So what I can do here is, I want to get rid of this. I put in my ellipsis. It makes up 77% of all homicides. And let's say I don't want this because I've said this already, Washington, D.C. committed with a gun. So I just get rid of that, and I even put an ellipsis here to show that I didn't use the whole sentence. So the increasing number of crimes committed by guns in D.C. is alarming because it makes up 77% of all homicides. I still have to say who said this, and we know who said it. It was Zornick in his article in 2018. If I had a page number, again, if it was on page 14, I would put it here. If I was just working from the HTML, that's all I need to do. Okay? So hopefully that much makes sense right now. Are you allowed to do this? Put in an ellipsis at the beginning and the end? Yes, you are. As long as you're not changing any of this, you know, the sense of the sentence. So let's do one more. Again, here's the quote we're working with. We know we want to put this in, but we want a full sentence to precede it. So a full sentence could stand alone. You could just put a period by it. So you would say something like, crime is increasing at an alarming rate in the city. You could put a period there. But if you want to show something that's very closely related, like the statistics, you would just put, make that a little bigger for you, a colon, and then introduce your quote. And again, At the end, you need to put in Zornick 2018. Put your period there. Okay. What's the difference between this one and this one? Well, in a full sentence, you could have put a period here, and those two sentences could have stood alone. In the weave, you couldn't have put a sentence here. The increasing number of crimes committed by guns in D.C. is alarming because it makes up. You couldn't put a period there. It's not complete. So this sentence is relying on this part of the sentence to be complete. In a full sentence introduction, you've written a sentence, you've put a colon, and you have something very closely related after that colon that's kind of proving your point. So I hope this helps you out a little bit and makes it a little more clear how to research and how to use in-text citations. Now let's say, for argument's sake, we'd like to do a reference page. Well, I would go out to Citation Machine, and I'd say, what was it that I was just reading? Was it a magazine? Was it a newspaper? Was it a website? It was a journal. Okay. So, if we go back, this was called the disruptors. So I'd put it in here and see if Citation Machine can find it. And you can see here it did not. So I go to manual entry mode. Well, this is easy enough. In APA citations, the article title, the first letter gets capitalized. All of the other letters are lowercase, unless it's a proper name or name of the country, etc. Who was the author? You would think I would have memorized his name already, but I haven't. George Zornick. The title of the journal, do you remember? It was called The Nation. And then it asks you for advanced info. And if you remember, it did have the volume 306 and the issue 13. The year it was published. And the pages it spanned. Even though you might have been using the HTML, you'd still include the pages 12 to 15 right here. The day you accessed it. If there was a URL, you would put it here. And it says, it kind of prompts you, add homepage URL of the publisher. If no publisher URL, use the homepage database URL. So if I go back here, this is a really long URL. If there is a DOI, you would have seen it here. There is not. Adding annotations allows you, if you're using multiple sources, to just tell yourself, remind yourself what's in the article or what the article is about. So you could put a summary there. You hit Create Citation, and voila. There is your entry. If you need to correct it, you can edit it. If you need to know what the in-text citation is, you can click on this and say, oh, well, I know I don't need the title, but I do need the author, I do need the year, and right down here it tells you what to put in the in-text citation. So that's pretty much it. You know, when you're done, you can copy it, you can download the list. As you can see, I was working with another source earlier to show you how that's done. If you wanted to download it, You need an account, so apparently you can't. I'm sorry about that. It used to be free. But you could cut and paste that and start your references page. So that's it for right now, and hopefully you'll join us next week when Joe Louderback will come in and introduce Noodle Tools to you, which is a similar tool, but one where you'll have full access.